The screams echoed through the maintenance deck of the Ocean Harmony as two crew members stumbled backward from cabin 4127, their faces drained of color and their hands trembling uncontrollably. What they discovered behind that door had been sealed away for 6 months, waiting like a buried secret that refused to stay dead. But the real horror wasn't what they found. It was what it meant about the night 7-year-old twins Emma and Ethan Morrison supposedly fell overboard and drowned. Detective Sarah Chen had seen enough tragedy in her 15 years with the Miami Police Department's Maritime Division to know that some cases never truly close. The Morrison twins case had haunted her since that October night when their parents, Dr. Richard Morrison and his wife Jennifer, reported their children missing from their family cruise vacation. The Coast Guard search lasted 4 days. No bodies were ever recovered. The case was officially closed as accidental drowning, but something about the parents' behavior during questioning had always bothered Sarah. Now, standing on the dock in Port Miami as the Ocean Harmony returned from its latest Caribbean route, Sarah felt that familiar knot in her stomach that told her the truth was about to surface in ways she never expected. The ship's captain, Marcus Rodriguez, had personally called her after the maintenance crew's discovery. His voice on the phone had been steady, professional, but she could hear the underlying tension that came from years of keeping maritime secrets. "Detective Chen, we've had a situation," Captain Rodriguez said as he met her at the gangway. His weathered face bore the marks of 30 years at sea, but today he looked older, more tired. "I think you need to see this before we call anyone else." The elevator ride to Deck 4 felt endless. Sarah noticed the captain's hands were clasped tightly behind his back, a gesture she recognized from her own nervous habits during difficult investigations. The hallway outside cabin 4127 was eerily quiet, yellow maintenance tape already blocking access. 2 crew members sat on chairs nearby, still visibly shaken. "Carlos found it during routine maintenance," Captain Rodriguez explained, indicating the younger of the 2 men. "We'd been having reports of a persistent odor in this section for weeks. Management assumed it was a plumbing issue." Carlos looked up at Sarah with haunted eyes. "The smell. It wasn't plumbing, Detective. The cabin's been locked since that night 6 months ago. Management orders. No one was supposed to go in until corporate decided what to do with it." Sarah pulled on latex gloves and approached the door. The electronic lock showed a red light, still sealed, as it had been since the Morrison family's departure. "Who has access to override this lock?" "Ship security, myself and..." Captain Rodriguez paused. "And Dr. Morrison. He insisted on keeping his keycard active for insurance purposes. Said he might need to retrieve personal items." The door opened with a soft beep, and immediately Sarah understood why the crew had screamed. The cabin wasn't ransacked or destroyed. Instead, it was perfectly preserved, as if the Morrison family had just stepped out for dinner. 2 small suitcases sat on the twin beds, clothes still folded neatly inside. Children's drawings were taped to the mirror, stick figures of a family on a boat, smiling under a bright yellow sun. But what made Sarah's breath catch was what she found in the bathroom. Hidden behind the shower curtain were 2 sets of children's clothes, damp and crusted with salt water, carefully laid out as if someone had been planning to wash them. More disturbing still were the towels arranged on the floor in the exact shapes and sizes of 2 small bodies. This was no accident. This was a shrine. Captain Rodriguez appeared in the doorway, his face grim. "Detective, there's something else." We checked the security footage from that night again after we found this. The cameras showed Dr. and Mrs. Morrison returning to their cabin at 11:47 p.m. with both children clearly visible. But the next morning, when they reported the twins missing, they claimed the children had gone to bed early and they'd discovered them gone during the night. Sarah felt pieces of a dark puzzle beginning to form in her mind. Show me everything. Every piece of footage, every crew statement, every report filed that night. This shocking twist is just the beginning of this amazing story. If you're enjoying it, leave a comment below sharing your theories, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss what comes next. The security office of the Ocean Harmony was a cramped space filled with monitors and hard drives containing months of recorded footage. Chief Security Officer Elena Vasquez had worked cruise ships for 12 years and prided herself on maintaining detailed records of every incident, no matter how minor. "I always thought something was off about that night," Elena said, pulling up the relevant footage on her computer. "Look at this. The Morrison family boarding on October 15th. Happy family, excited kids. Normal vacation start. The timestamp showed 2:30 p.m. as the Morrison family walked up the gangway. Emma and Ethan, identical twins with bright blonde hair and matching blue dinosaur t-shirts, practically bounced with excitement. Dr. Morrison, a tall man with graying temples, carried their luggage while Jennifer Morrison, elegant in a white sundress, held both children's hands. "Now watch this," Elena continued, fast-forwarding to that evening. Dinner time, 7:15 p.m. Family of 4 at table 45, main dining room. The security camera showed the Morrisons at dinner, the twins laughing and playing with their food while their parents watched with patient smiles. Everything appeared normal, loving even. Dr. Morrison was cutting Ethan's meat while Jennifer helped Emma with her vegetables. "But here's where it gets strange," Elena said, switching to a different camera feed. 10:30 p.m., family returns to cabin 4127, all 4 clearly visible. The hallway camera showed the Morrison family returning from what appeared to be the evening entertainment show. The twins were sleepy, leaning against their parents as Dr. Morrison swiped the key card to their cabin. They disappeared inside, the door closing behind them with a soft click. Elena's fingers paused over the keyboard. "Now watch this." 11:47 p.m., same camera. Sarah leaned forward as the timestamp showed the Morrisons exiting their cabin again. But something was wrong with the scene. The parents moved differently, more rigid, more purposeful. And the twins, "My God," Sarah whispered. "Those aren't the children walking." Elena nodded grimly. "Look closely at their movement. The children are the right height, wearing the same clothes, but their gait is all wrong. They move like adults trying to walk like children." Sarah studied the footage intently. The figures that appeared to be Emma and Ethan walked too deliberately, without the natural spontaneity of 7-year-olds. Their heads never turned to look around the hallway, and they stayed perfectly in step with their parents, behavior she'd never seen in any child. "What about when they returned?" Sarah asked. "That's just it," Elena said, her voice dropping. "They never did. The next footage of Dr. and Mrs. Morrison shows them leaving their cabin alone at 6:30 a.m. to report their children missing. No children entering or leaving the cabin between these 2 times. Sarah felt her detective instincts sharpening. "Show me the guest list for that week. Who else was staying in cabins near the Morrisons?" Elena pulled up another screen. Cabin 4125, directly across the hall, was registered to a Mr. James Walsh, traveling alone. Cabin 4129, next door, was empty. We had a last-minute cancellation. But here's what's interesting about Mr. Walsh. The passenger photo showed a middle-aged man with kind eyes and a gentle smile. But as Elena pulled up his file, Sarah noticed several anomalies. He booked the cruise only 3 days before departure, paid in cash, and specifically requested cabin 4125. When we ran his background check after the incident, we discovered James Walsh died in Phoenix 2 years ago. Cancer. Someone used his identity. Sarah's mind raced. "Do we have any other footage of this fake Mr. Walsh?" "That's where it gets really strange," Elena said, switching to another camera angle. "We have footage of him in various ship locations throughout the week, but never his face clearly. It's as if he deliberately avoided the cameras. And on the night the twins went missing, there's no footage of him at all after 9 p.m. Captain Rodriguez knocked on the door of the security office. "Detective Chen, you need to see what else we found in the Morrison cabin." They returned to cabin 4127, where the ship's housekeeping supervisor, Maria Santos, waited with a troubled expression. In her 30 years of cleaning cruise ship cabins, she'd seen everything, but nothing had prepared her for this. "Detective, I found these hidden in the air vent above the beds," Maria said, producing a sealed plastic bag containing 2 children's life jackets. "They're the same ones issued to the Morrison children during the mandatory safety drill. But look at the straps." Sarah examined the life jackets carefully. The safety straps had been cut cleanly through and then taped back together with clear tape, invisible unless examined closely. The jackets would appear functional, but would fail the moment any weight was placed on them. "Someone wanted these children to drown," Sarah said quietly. Captain Rodriguez nodded grimly. "But there's more. We also found this note, wedged behind the headboard of one of the beds." He handed Sarah a piece of ship stationery with handwriting that appeared to be a child's. "Daddy said we're going swimming tonight when everyone's asleep. He said it's a special surprise and we can't tell Mommy. Emma is scared, but I told her it will be fun. We're going to see real fish." Sarah's heart sank as she recognized the implications. This was written by one of the twins, But why would they write this if they were supposedly asleep in their cabin? Unless they weren't, Elena suggested. What if the children were already gone before the parents came back to the cabin at 11:47? Sarah examined the note more closely. The handwriting was shaky, suggesting fear or excitement, but the words were spelled correctly for a 7-year-old. More importantly, the paper had slight water stains, not fresh, but as if it had been dampened and dried. I need to talk to Dr. Morrison immediately, Sarah said. But first, show me everything about this mysterious passenger who used James Walsh's identity. Elena led them back to the security office and pulled up every piece of footage she could find of the fake James Walsh. As they watched, a pattern emerged. The man appeared to be following the Morrison family throughout their cruise, always staying within view, but never approaching them directly. There, Sarah pointed to the screen. Dining room, October 16th, 12:30 p.m. He's sitting 3 tables away from the Morrisons. And there, pool deck, same day, 3:15 p.m. He's reading a book but watching the children swim. Elena fast-forwarded through more footage. And here's the most disturbing part. October 18th, the day before the twins disappeared. He's in the kids' club area during activity time. Look how he positions himself. The man stood near the back of the children's activity room, partially hidden behind other parents, but his attention was focused entirely on Emma and Ethan Morrison. He wasn't watching the other children or engaging with other passengers. His body language suggested intense observation, like a predator studying prey. Do we have audio on any of these cameras? Sarah asked. Limited, but yes. Let me enhance this footage from the kids' club. Elena adjusted the audio levels and played back the scene. Through the ambient noise of children playing, they could hear fragments of conversation. A child's voice, possibly Ethan's. The man said he knows a secret place. An adult's voice, unfamiliar and male. Special adventure, just for brave kids like you. Emma's voice uncertain. Mommy said not to talk to strangers. The fake James Walsh's voice, reassuring, but with an undertone that made Sarah's skin crawl. Your daddy asked me to take care of you. It's a surprise for tomorrow night. Sarah felt sick. The pieces were falling into place, painting a picture far darker than a simple accident. Elena, I need you to check something else. The night the twins disappeared, were there any other unusual passenger movements? Anyone leaving or entering the ship? Elena's fingers flew over the keyboard. Actually, yes. At 2:17 a.m., about 2.5 hours after the Morrisons returned to their cabin with the fake children, a crew member used a service exit to leave the ship. But here's the problem. When we cross-referenced with duty schedules, no crew member was supposed to be off the ship at that time. Show me. The footage showed a figure in cruise ship staff clothing using a key card to exit through a service door that led to the dock. The person moved quickly and kept their head down, but something about their build and movement seemed familiar. Can you enhance this image? Sarah asked. As Elena worked to clarify the image, Sarah's phone rang. The caller ID showed Dr. Richard Morrison. Detective Chen? I heard the ship was back in port. I hope this means you have news about... His voice broke slightly. About our children. Dr. Morrison, I need you to come to the ship immediately. We've discovered some new evidence that requires your immediate attention. There was a long pause. Evidence? What kind of evidence? I'd prefer to discuss it in person. How quickly can you get here? Before we continue with this amazing story, I want to ask you, can you imagine what's going to happen next? Share your theories in the comments and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a single detail of this incredible story. Dr. Morrison arrived at the Port Miami terminal 30 minutes later, faster than traffic should have allowed. Sarah watched him approach through the security office window, a man who had aged considerably in the 6 months since his children's disappearance. His previously neat appearance had given way to wrinkled clothes and unkempt hair, and his eyes held the haunted look of someone carrying an unbearable burden. Dr. Morrison, Sarah greeted him as he entered the ship. Thank you for coming so quickly. Detective, please just tell me you found something. Anything. Jennifer and I, we haven't been able to function since... He stopped, unable to finish the sentence. Sarah led him to a private conference room she'd arranged, away from the cabin where they'd made their discoveries. She needed to observe his reactions carefully, and she wanted him comfortable enough to let his guard down. Dr. Morrison, I need to ask you some questions about the night Emma and Ethan disappeared. I know this is difficult, but we found some inconsistencies in the timeline that require clarification. His hands tightened in his lap. What kind of inconsistencies? We told you everything we remember. Let's start with the timeline. You and Jennifer returned to your cabin with the twins at 10:30 p.m. after the evening show. The children went to bed, and you discovered them missing when you woke up at 6:30 a.m. Is that correct? Yes, that's exactly what happened. Sarah pulled out her tablet and showed him a still image from the security camera. This is footage from the hallway outside your cabin at 11:47 p.m. Can you explain why you and Jennifer are leaving the cabin again with Emma and Ethan? Dr. Morrison stared at the screen, his face going pale. That's not possible. The children were asleep in bed. They never left the cabin after 10:30. Look closer at the footage, Dr. Morrison. She played the video, and as he watched, something shifted in his expression. The confusion gave way to something else. Fear, perhaps, or recognition. Dr. Morrison, those figures with you and Jennifer aren't your children, are they? His hands began to shake. I don't understand what you're showing me. Sarah leaned forward. We also found some items in your cabin that have been preserved since that night, including life jackets belonging to Emma and Ethan with cut safety straps. At this, Dr. Morrison's composure cracked completely. He buried his face in his hands and began to sob, deep, wrenching sounds that spoke of months of suppressed grief and guilt. Dr. Morrison, I need you to tell me the truth. What really happened to your children? Through his tears, the words came haltingly. It wasn't supposed to happen like that. Jennifer and I, we were having problems, financial problems. My practice was failing. We had mountains of debt, and we'd taken out life insurance policies on the children just months before the cruise. Sarah felt her stomach turn, but she kept her voice steady. Go on. We met him in the ship's casino the second night. He said his name was James Walsh, that he was a businessman. He was charming, bought us drinks, seemed genuinely interested in our family. Then he started asking about the children. What kind of questions? Innocent things at first. How old they were, what they liked to do, if they were good swimmers. But then he started talking about how difficult it must be to raise twins, how expensive everything was, how some problems could be solved. Dr. Morrison looked up at Sarah with eyes full of self-loathing. He knew about our debt. I don't know how, but he knew everything. He said he could help us, that he'd done it before for other families. He called it liberation. You agreed to let him kill your children? No! The word came out as a shout. That's not... We never agreed to anything. He said he had a different solution. He said he could arrange for the children to disappear safely, that they would be taken care of, adopted by a loving family who couldn't have children of their own. He said we could collect the insurance and start over, and Emma and Ethan would have a better life. Sarah struggled to keep her professional composure. Dr. Morrison, you must have known that wasn't possible. Jennifer believed him. She was desperate and she wanted to believe. And God help me, I wanted to believe too. Our debt was crushing us. We were going to lose everything anyway. At least this way the children might have a chance. So, what happened that night? Dr. Morrison took a shuddering breath. Walsh said he had made arrangements. That night, after the show, we brought the children back to the cabin as usual. But he was waiting for us. He had key cards. Somehow he'd gotten into the cabin. And then, he gave Jennifer and me sedatives. Said we needed to sleep through what came next for our own protection. He said when we woke up the children would be gone, and we should wait until morning to report them missing. He gave us pillows and blankets to put under the covers of their beds, to make it look like they were sleeping. Sarah made notes, her mind working to piece together the timeline. But the security footage shows you leaving the cabin again with figures that looked like the children. Those were dolls, Dr. Morrison whispered. Life-size dolls dressed in Emma and Ethan's clothes. Walsh said it was necessary to make the cameras show the children leaving willingly, to support the story that they had fallen overboard accidentally. So you knew you were participating in faking their disappearance? Dr. Morrison nodded miserably. But we thought they were safe. Walsh showed us pictures of a nice house, a suburban neighborhood. He said he worked with a network of people who facilitated private adoptions for wealthy families who couldn't have children through normal channels. Sarah felt pieces clicking into place. Dr. Morrison, do you realize what you actually did? You delivered your children to a stranger, a man using a dead person's identity. What do you mean? The real James Walsh died of cancer 2 years ago. The man you met was using his identity. We have no idea who he really was. The color drained from Dr. Morrison's face. That's not possible. He showed us documentation, photographs, references, all fake. Dr. Morrison, I need you to understand something. Your children weren't adopted by a loving family. Based on the evidence we've found, they were murdered. Dr. Morrison jumped to his feet, pacing frantically. No, that can't be true. He promised they would be safe. He showed us the house where they would live, he said. Sarah stood as well, maintaining eye contact. What did he say, Dr. Morrison? Exactly what did he say? He said they would go to sleep peacefully and wake up in their new home. He said it would be like a beautiful dream. The euphemistic language sent chills down Sarah's spine. Dr. Morrison, I believe your children were drugged and drowned that night. The man you trusted was a killer who preyed on desperate parents. Dr. Morrison collapsed back into his chair, the full horror of what had happened finally sinking in. Jennifer doesn't know. She still believes they're alive somewhere, in a better home. She looks at adoption websites, thinking she might see them someday. Where is your wife now? Psychiatric facility. She had a complete breakdown 3 months ago. She keeps asking when we can visit the children. Sarah felt a profound sadness for this broken family, even as she grappled with the magnitude of their crime. Dr. Morrison, I need you to tell me everything you remember about Walsh. Every detail, no matter how small. Over the next 2 hours, Dr. Morrison provided a detailed description of the man who had manipulated them into betraying their own children. He was approximately 45 years old, average height, with brown hair graying at the temples. He spoke with a slight accent that could have been Eastern European. He wore expensive clothes and always paid in cash. Most importantly, he had a distinctive scar on his left hand, running from his wrist to his middle finger. He said he'd been doing this for years, Dr. Morrison added. He mentioned other families, other children who had been liberated from difficult situations. Sarah made careful notes. This wasn't an isolated incident. They were dealing with a serial killer who specifically targeted vulnerable families. Dr. Morrison, I need to place you under arrest. He nodded, seeming almost relieved. I know. I've known since that night that we'd done something terrible. But Jennifer, what will happen to Jennifer? We'll make sure she gets the care she needs. But Dr. Morrison, there's something else I need you to know. We found a note in your cabin, apparently written by one of your children. It suggests they were told they were going swimming that night as a special surprise. Dr. Morrison's face crumpled. They trusted him. They thought it was a game. Sarah called for backup to take Dr. Morrison into custody, but her work was far from over. She needed to find this fake James Walsh and determine how many other families had fallen victim to his scheme. Elena appeared in the doorway. Detective, we've enhanced that image of the crew member leaving the ship that night. You need to see this. Back in the security office, Elena showed Sarah the enhanced footage. The figure leaving through the service exit was indeed wearing cruise ship staff clothing, but the enhancement revealed something crucial: the distinctive scar running across his left hand, visible as he used the key card. It's him, Sarah said. Walsh didn't leave as a passenger. He left his crew. Which means he had inside help, Elena concluded. Someone provided him with a crew uniform and keycard access. Captain Rodriguez joined them, his expression grim. Detective, I've been reviewing our staff records for that cruise. We had a temporary crew member who joined us just for that trip, maintenance staff. He gave his name as Thomas Muller, said he was filling in for a sick colleague from our sister ship. Let me guess, Sarah said. No one could verify his credentials. Worse than that, the colleague he was supposedly replacing was never sick. In fact, that man was working his regular shift on the sister ship the entire time. The scope of the deception was staggering. This killer had not only infiltrated the passenger list, but had also managed to get himself hired as crew, giving him unprecedented access to all areas of the ship. Captain, I need a complete list of everyone who was in contact with this fake crew member. Anyone who would have known about his access or movements. As they worked to identify potential accomplices, Sarah's phone rang. It was the medical examiner's office. Detective Chen? Dr. Williams here. We have the preliminary results on those items you sent over from the cruise ship. What did you find? The children's clothing you found in the cabin tested positive for a high concentration of chloral hydrate. It's a sedative that was commonly used in the past. Also, we found traces of salt water that matches the chemical composition of the ocean where the ship was traveling that night. Sarah felt her worst fears confirmed. Any other evidence? The towels arranged on the bathroom floor had been dampened with the same salt water. But here's what's really disturbing. We found tiny fabric fibers embedded in the towels that match the children's clothing. It's as if someone laid the children on those towels while they were wet. The image that formed in Sarah's mind was horrific. The killer had brought the children back to the cabin after drowning them, possibly to create the shrine they'd discovered. But why? Dr. Williams, how long would the sedative have taken to work? Given the concentration we found, probably 15 to 20 minutes for full unconsciousness in children that age. Sarah thanked the medical examiner and turned back to the evidence board Elena had created on the wall of the security office. They had established a timeline, identified the killer's methods, and confirmed the fate of the children. But they still didn't know who he really was or where to find him. "There's one more thing," Captain Rodriguez said quietly. "I've been thinking about what Dr. Morrison said about Walsh mentioning other families. 6 months ago, just before the Morrison cruise, there was another incident on a different cruise line. A family with a young daughter. She supposedly fell overboard during a Caribbean cruise. The parents' story was similar to the Morrisons." Sarah felt a chill. "Do you have details on that case?" "I can get them. But Detective, if this man has been targeting families on cruise ships for years and he has access to crew credentials, he could be anywhere. Any ship, any cruise line. The thought of this predator continuing to operate, targeting vulnerable families and innocent children, filled Sarah with determination. They had to find him before he claimed more victims. Elena suddenly straightened at her computer. "Detective, I've been running facial recognition on all the footage we have of Walsh, comparing it to databases of known criminals. I got a hit." She turned her screen to show Sarah a police booking photo. The face matched the man they'd been tracking, but his hair was different, and he looked younger. "Martin Volkov, arrested 3 years ago in Philadelphia for fraud and identity theft. He was released on bail and disappeared before trial. But look at this. He was arrested in connection with a scheme where he posed as an adoption facilitator, taking money from desperate families looking to adopt children." Sarah studied the information Elena had pulled up. Martin Volkov, born in Romania, had entered the United States 15 years ago on a student visa that had long since expired. He had been arrested multiple times for identity theft, fraud, and once for child endangerment, though charges were dropped in that case. He's escalated, Sarah realized, from stealing identities and money to actually killing children. The question is, where is he now? Elena's phone rang. After a brief conversation, she turned to Sarah with renewed urgency. "That was Port Security. A crew member from the Mediterranean Dream, another cruise ship docked here, just reported seeing someone matching Walsh's description in their crew quarters 2 hours ago." Sarah grabbed her weapon and badge. "Let's go." The Mediterranean Dream was 3 berths down from the Ocean Harmony, a massive ship that had just returned from a 10-day Mediterranean cruise. As Sarah and Elena approached with Port Security, Captain Maria Santos of the Mediterranean Dream met them at the gangway. "Officers, I'm not sure what we're dealing with here, but my crew is spooked. Thomas Mueller, if that's even his real name, has been working in maintenance for this entire cruise. But this morning, one of our housekeeping staff found something disturbing in his quarters." Captain Santos led them to a cramped crew cabin in the lower decks of the ship. The small room contained the usual crew quarters furnishings, but what made Sarah's blood run cold were the photographs pinned to the wall above the narrow bed. Dozens of photographs of children, all appearing to be between the ages of 5 and 10, all smiling and happy. But Sarah recognized some of these faces from missing persons reports she'd seen over the years. In the center of this gallery were 2 photos that made her gasp. Emma and Ethan Morrison, clearly taken during their cruise, showing them playing in the ship's pool with no idea they were being stalked. "There's more," Captain Santos said, pointing to a notebook lying open on the small desk. "He's been keeping records." Sarah examined the notebook with growing horror. Page after page detailed information about families traveling with children. Names, cabin numbers, financial situations gleaned from overheard conversations, behavioral observations of the children. The final entry was dated just 3 days ago and concerned a family named the Hendersons, traveling with their 5-year-old daughter Sophie. "Where are the Hendersons now?" Sarah asked urgently. "They disembarked this morning. They were scheduled to catch a flight back to Chicago at 2 p.m. Sarah checked her watch. 1:30 p.m. "We need to contact airport security immediately, and we need to find Mueller." As port security coordinated with Miami International Airport, Sarah and Elena searched the rest of the ship. The crew members they questioned described Mueller as quiet, efficient, and helpful. someone who blended seamlessly into the background. No one had noticed anything suspicious about his behavior, which made him even more dangerous. "Detective," Elena called from the ship's security office. "You need to see this footage from last night." The security camera showed Mueller in a maintenance uniform, walking purposefully through the crew areas at 3 a.m. He carried a large equipment bag and moved with the confidence of someone who belonged there. "Track his movement," Sarah instructed. Elena followed Mueller's path through multiple camera angles. He went to the supply closet, filled his bag with cleaning supplies, then headed to the passenger decks. The trail led to Deck 8, where the Henderson family's cabin was located. He was planning another abduction, Sarah realized, but something changed his plans. Elena fast-forwarded through more footage. At 4:15 a.m., Mueller reappeared, moving quickly toward the crew quarters, his equipment bag noticeably emptier. He looked agitated, frequently checking over his shoulder. Something spooked him, Elena observed. Sarah's phone rang. "Airport security. Detective Chen, we found the Henderson family at their gate. We've detained them for questioning, but they report no unusual incidents during their cruise. Their daughter Sophie is safe and with them." Sarah felt relief, but also confusion. If Mueller had been planning to target the Henderson child, what had stopped him? The answer came from an unexpected source. A crew member from the Mediterranean Dream had been listening to their conversation and approached hesitantly. "Excuse me, detective, but last night around 4 a.m., I saw Mueller in the hallway outside the passenger cabins. He looked upset, almost sick. When he saw me, he said something strange." "What did he say?" "He said the children were asking for their mother. It didn't make sense to me at the time, but now..." The crew member shuddered. "Do you think he was hearing voices?" Sarah felt a chill as she considered the implication. Perhaps the guilt of his previous crimes was finally catching up with him, manifesting as auditory hallucinations. Or perhaps something more disturbing. Maybe he kept his victims conscious longer than they'd thought. "We need to expand our search," Sarah said. "He's not just dangerous, he's becoming unstable." Elena's computer chimed with an incoming message. "Detective, we just got a hit on Martin Volkov's credit cards. Someone used a card registered to him at a car rental agency here in Miami 2 hours ago." "What kind of car?" "Blue Honda Civic, Florida plates." Elena read off the license number. Sarah immediately radioed the information to all units. A dangerous child killer was loose in Miami, and based on his pattern, he was already looking for his next victim. 20 minutes later, a patrol unit spotted the rental car in the parking lot of a shopping mall in suburban Miami. Sarah arrived at the scene to find the car empty but still warm. They were close. Inside the mall, Sarah coordinated with store security to review surveillance footage. They quickly located Mueller entering the mall 30 minutes earlier. He had changed out of his crew uniform and was wearing civilian clothes, but the distinctive scar on his hand was clearly visible. "There," the security guard pointed to a monitor. "He's in the toy store." Sarah felt her heart race. A toy store meant children. She gathered her backup and approached the store carefully, noting the families shopping inside with their young children oblivious to the danger. Mueller was standing in the doll aisle, staring at a display of life-sized dolls similar to those he had used to fake the Morrison children's departure from the cruise ship. When he saw Sarah's reflection in the store window, he immediately understood that his time was up. "Mr. Volkov," Sarah called out, keeping her voice calm and her weapon concealed. "I'm Detective Chen. We need to talk." The families in the store sensed the tension and began moving away, parents instinctively pulling their children closer. Mueller stood frozen, his hand reaching toward one of the dolls. "You found them," he said quietly, without turning around. "The Morrison children. I knew someday someone would find them." "Yes, we found them. And now we're going to find all the other children you've taken." Mueller finally turned to face her, and Sarah was shocked by his appearance. The confident, predatory man from the cruise ship footage had been replaced by someone who looked broken, haunted. His eyes were bloodshot and his hands trembled. "They visit me," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Every night, they come to my room and ask why they can't go home. Emma still has her stuffed rabbit. Ethan keeps asking if it's time for breakfast yet." Sarah realized that whatever psychological break had made him abandon his plan with the Henderson child was accelerating, but she needed to keep him talking, to learn about his other victims. "How many children, Martin? How many families have you destroyed?" 12 families, he said, his voice growing stronger as if confessing was bringing him relief. "Over 4 years." Always families with financial problems, always parents who could be convinced that giving up their children was an act of love. Sarah kept her weapon ready but maintained a non-threatening posture. Tell me about the first family, the Garcias in 2021. They were drowning in medical debt from their son's cancer treatment. I convinced them that their 8-year-old daughter would have a better life with a wealthy family who could afford proper medical care if their son's condition worsened. They believed me because they wanted to believe, and you killed her instead. Muller's eyes filled with tears. I tell myself it was mercy, that these children would have suffered in poverty, in broken homes. But the truth is, I enjoyed their trust, the way they looked at me like I was their friend, their protector. Sarah felt sick but pressed on. Where are the bodies? The ocean takes them all, but I keep something from each child. A photograph, a toy, a piece of clothing. To remember them. We're going to need you to show us where you've hidden those items. Muller nodded, seeming almost relieved to be caught. There's a storage unit in Fort Lauderdale, Unit 247. The key is in my wallet. As Sarah moved to arrest him, Muller suddenly spoke again, his voice urgent. Detective, there's something else. I didn't work alone. Sarah froze. What do you mean? There's someone else. Someone who helped me identify the families. Someone with access to passenger information, financial records, psychological profiles. I could never have found these vulnerable families on my own. Who? I only knew him as the coordinator. We never met in person. All communication was through encrypted messages and dead drops, but he's the one who set everything up. The false crew credentials, the passenger manifests, even the life insurance policies. Sarah realized the scope of what they'd uncovered was far larger than she'd imagined. This wasn't just about one killer. It was an organized operation targeting vulnerable families. How did you communicate with this coordinator? There's a phone hidden in my crew quarters on the Mediterranean Dream. Burner phone, only one contact. Check the messages, everything's there. As backup officers took Muller into custody, Sarah felt a mixture of relief and dread. They'd caught the killer, but the revelation of a larger conspiracy meant more predators were still out there, still targeting innocent families. Back on the Mediterranean Dream, they found the hidden phone exactly where Muller had described. The message history revealed a chilling operation spanning multiple cruise lines and involving several other individuals posing as crew members. Elena examined the phone with growing concern. Detective, these messages show coordinates for at least 15 different locations where bodies were disposed of, and there are references to upcoming opportunities. 3 more families have been identified as targets. Sarah immediately contacted FBI Special Agent Roberts, who specialized in organized child trafficking. Within hours, a joint task force was assembled to track down the remaining members of this deadly network. The storage unit in Fort Lauderdale contained a horrific gallery of trophies from Muller's victims. Small shoes, stuffed animals, photographs, and jewelry from 27 children, more than Muller had initially admitted to. Each item was carefully labeled with the child's name and the date of their death. Among the items, Sarah found Emma Morrison's stuffed rabbit and Ethan's favorite toy car. The sight of these innocent objects, preserved like museum pieces by their killer, brought home the full tragedy of what had happened to these families. This story has come to an end, but there are many others waiting to be told. If you felt moved by this narrative, share it with your friends, leave a like, and comment on what impacted you the most. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories like this one. The investigation that followed Muller's arrest uncovered one of the largest organized child trafficking and murder operations in U.S. history. The coordinator was eventually identified as Marcus Webb, a former cruise line executive who had been selling passenger information to criminals for over a decade. His network included crew members, port officials, and even some travel agents who helped identify vulnerable families. Dr. Morrison pleaded guilty to conspiracy and child endangerment charges. During his sentencing, he spoke directly to the families of Muller's other victims, expressing his profound remorse for his role in enabling these crimes. He received 15 years in prison but would carry the weight of his children's deaths for the rest of his life. Jennifer Morrison, when told the truth about her children's fate during her psychiatric treatment, suffered a complete breakdown that lasted months. However, with proper care and the support of other victims' families, she slowly began the long process of healing. She eventually became an advocate for cruise ship safety and worked to establish better screening procedures for crew members. Mueller himself provided detailed confessions that helped law enforcement locate the remains of several children who had been missing for years. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In his final statement to the court, he claimed that knowing the children's spirits had found peace gave him his only comfort. The cruise industry implemented sweeping changes in the wake of the investigation. Enhanced background checks for crew members, improved cabin security systems, and better coordination with law enforcement became standard across all major cruise lines. The Morrison Family Safety Act was passed, requiring cruise ships to immediately report any missing children to the FBI and Coast Guard. Sarah continued to work cases involving missing children, but the Morrison twins' investigation changed her forever. She kept a framed photo of Emma and Ethan on her desk, not to remember the tragedy, but to remember the importance of fighting for those who cannot fight for themselves. On the one-year anniversary of the investigation's conclusion, Sarah received a letter from Dr. Morrison in prison. In it, he wrote about the children he tutored in the prison's education program, how working with them gave his life meaning again. He had enclosed a small drawing made by one of his students, a family holding hands under a bright sun, with two small angels watching over them from the clouds. The case officially closed, but its impact rippled through countless lives. Enhanced cruise security protocols prevented similar tragedies. Families of Mueller's victims found closure and began to heal. The cruise industry became safer, and law enforcement agencies improved their methods for tracking organized crime networks. Yet questions remained. In the storage unit, investigators found evidence suggesting Mueller's network had connections to similar operations in Europe and Asia. The fight against predators who exploit vulnerable families continues, but the courage of those who expose these crimes ensures that fewer children will suffer in the shadows. The Ocean Harmony still sails the Caribbean, but Cabin 4127 has been permanently removed from service. In its place, the ship's designers created a small memorial garden where passengers can reflect on the preciousness of family and the importance of protecting the innocent. A plaque reads simply, "For Emma and Ethan and all the children we failed to protect." Sometimes justice comes too late to save the innocent, but it can still ensure their memory serves as a shield for those who come after. The Morrison twins' story became a catalyst for change, proving that even in the darkest tragedies, light can emerge to illuminate a safer path forward for others. The ocean that took Emma and Ethan Morrison now carries ships equipped with better safeguards, crewed by more carefully vetted staff, and monitored by systems designed to ensure no child disappears without immediate, comprehensive response. Their deaths were not in vain if they prevent other families from experiencing such devastating loss. In the end, the greatest victory over evil is not revenge, but protection, ensuring that the vulnerable are safe, that the innocent are shielded, and that love triumphs over those who would exploit desperation and trust. The Morrison children's legacy lives on in every child who boards a cruise ship safely, every family that returns home intact, and every predator who is caught before they can claim another victim. The case of the Morrison twins reminded everyone that true evil often wears a friendly face and preys on our deepest vulnerabilities. But it also proved that when good people refuse to look away from uncomfortable truths, justice can prevail and healing can begin. Even the deepest waters must eventually surrender their secrets, and the truth, however painful, can set us free.